Welcome to the West Coast Hall of Fame. The West Coast Hall of Fame is all about the presentation and the preservation of memorabilia celebrating the cultural history of the West Coast. Now, today we have a special Christmas show for you. You might not think there's any connection between Christmas and baseball, but in fact, the Dodgers have a long history of celebrating Christmas with their fans.
Let's go! Batter up! We're taking the afternoon off. It's a beautiful day for a ball game today. The fans are out to get a ticket or two. From Walla Walla, Washington to Kalamazoo. It's a beautiful day for a home run, but even a triple's okay. We're gonna cheer and boo and raise a hullabaloo at the ball game today.
Well, one of the first Christmas items I ever saw from the Dodgers were Christmas cards. And they would send out Christmas cards to their season ticket holders and also to the executives of the team. And the first one I ever saw was this one from 1977. In that year, Tommy Lasorda became the manager. That was his first full season as the manager. And he delivered a pennant to the Dodgers that year. And what a great team that was. And in this card, we have Tommy as Santa Claus, naturally. It makes sense. And here he is delivering that championship pennant to Los Angeles for 1977. And I just love this card. This is one of my favorites. Now, the artist for this card was a very famous artist who grew up in Los Angeles. His name was Carl Hubenthal. And Hubenthal was very famous for doing a lot of artwork. He was the cartoonist for the Herald Examiner for many years. And he was hired by a lot of local teams to do artwork for their yearbooks and programs. And the Dodgers especially used them for quite a bit of material. So for instance, he did a lot of programs and yearbooks for the Dodgers. This is a 1970 program, and I really enjoy this program also because it really depicts what the Dodgers decided to do in their later years, which was have the kids on the field getting autographs from the players. And so that's a tradition that they've continued to do, and you'll see that before every Dodger game. Also, Hubenthal was hired to do the artwork for the World Series programs, a very important job back then. Each team during the era of the 60s and 70s would hire an artist to depict something for their program if they made the World Series. That changed in the mid-70s when Major League Baseball took over the job of producing the World Series program. But in this era, the teams were able to pick what artwork they wanted for the cover. And in this year, 1965, Hubenthal decided to make this the out of this World Series, showing the astronauts from the time period and the two teams as astronauts, the Dodgers and the Twins. And in that year, the Dodgers defeated the Twins in 7 games to win the championship. The following year, I think because they liked that 1965 yearbook so much, they decided to have Hubenthal design the 66 cover of the World Series program as well. And here it shows the Dodgers capturing the Orioles under their cap. Well, it didn't quite work out this way. The Orioles actually swept the Dodgers in that series of 66. But I believe this artwork is one of the best jobs that Hubenthal ever did for a World Series program. And the Dodgers continued to use Hubenthal for their artwork on yearbooks such as this one, again going back to 1977. This is Hubenthal's artwork showing the Dodgers of the time and the different pennants that they won during the years. The Dodgers continued to hire Hubenthal to do artwork for their Christmas cards. And this is the 1966 Christmas card, again showing the different years that the Dodgers won the pennant, going up the tree and being crowned by that 1966 pennant. And since this is a championship year for the Dodgers, I wanted to show you from the West Coast Hall of Fame collection another card. This is the card showing the World Series trophy from 1981. And this is especially important to all those of us who suffered through the defeats to the Yankees during the 70s in the World Series. But we finally defeated them in 1981, and this card celebrates that, shown here. In the mid-60s, the Dodgers were a very successful team, winning pennants in 1963, 65, and 1966. And during that era, the dominant pitcher of the team was Sandy Koufax. In 1965, Koufax had a bit of a dilemma at the beginning of the World Series because the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur landed on the same day as Game 1 of the series, and he declined to pitch on that day and instead pitched on Game 2. The Dodgers lost those first 2 games in the series, but went on to defeat the Twins in 7 games. This was the card that the Dodgers used for that year, 1965, again showing the team pulling that World Championship out of a box for Christmas and celebrating that championship. And in that year, Koufax himself sent out Christmas cards. And this one was sent to one of the executives in the front office. Her name was Dorothy Leavenworth. She worked for Red Patterson in the front office. And you can see here Sandy Koufax's card, signed by him inside. And that is an important piece from the West Coast Hall of Fame collection. Now, what would Christmas be without merchandise? Well, the Dodgers were very famous for selling merchandise at the stadium. And the man who really brought that together was Danny Goodman. He's really the father of baseball merchandise at the stadium. And every year the Dodgers would have a special Christmas list of items to sell at the stadium. So you could get all kinds of things here, but one of my favorites is the ashtray. I think it's classic that you could get your family member an ashtray to go along with their smoking habit back then. And here is that very item in the shape of Dodger Stadium from back in the 60s. So if you need your Christmas merchandise, you can get it at Dodger Stadium. Now, the O'Malley family was very generous with their employees. Sometimes after the season was over, they would give out special bonuses, and certainly during Christmas, they gave out gifts to their executives. This is an original artwork which was given to Ross Porter. Ross Porter was an announcer for the Dodgers for almost 30 years, and this was given to him back in 1997 for Christmas. Now, going back in time, back to the very first World Series championship of the Dodgers, that was in 1959. And that was quite a surprise for most people because that was only the second year the Dodgers had played in Los Angeles. So it was really something to win a championship after only having been in Los Angeles for 2 years. After all, in Brooklyn, the Dodgers waited many, many decades to win a championship. From 1890 to 1955, they waited for a championship. So here, after 2 years, the Dodgers won. And this is the card they sent out that year. And you can see on here, this has a depiction of Dodger Stadium on it, which is a little unusual. Dodger Stadium had not been built yet. In fact, the construction had just begun that year. But this is a depiction of what the stadium would look like. And if you look carefully at that, you'll see that up close. You'll see that it has 4 decks on it. The design did not really match the reality of what they could build. And so it does not actually look like this after it was built. It did not. It looked different than this. But in any case, this is the depiction that was used to show the fans what Dodger Stadium would look like in the future. And inside you can see here, there is the 1959 World Championship team, all there in the Christmas card from that season. Now, one thing that Carl Hubenthal was very famous for was depicting sort of the long stretch of seasons of the Dodgers and how they had their ups and downs. And back in 1967, he drew this card, which really showed the history of the team through that time period. And you can see the ups and downs of the seasons going from 1958 at the bottom to that World Championship in 1959. and the battle to get back up there back in 1963 and 65, and then the big sled downhill in the late 60s after Sandy Koufax had retired, and then hopefully the climb back up. So that was one of the classic cards that was done by Hubenthal for the Dodgers. Going back in time a little farther, we have this card, which was sent out by the Dodger ticket staff. And back then, Harold Parrott was the person in charge of the ticket office for the Dodgers. And this is very early on in LA Dodger history. Other people ended up taking that job later. But this is the card that was sent out probably around 1960. And again, showing a depiction of Dodger Stadium before it was built. And this is the oldest card we have in the collection. This is a card that goes back to the late 40s. So this goes back to the Brooklyn Dodger days. And we were able to date it because the person who sent this from the Dodgers was a executive with the team. His name was Jack Collins, and he was fired by the O'Malleys when they took over the team around 1950. So this dates it to the late 40s. The Dodgers continued to send out Christmas cards well into the 21st century. And so here are some of the more late cards. The Dodgers were very interested in promoting their foundation, their charitable foundation. This was a card designed by this young lady who won a contest, and she was able to do the card during that year. I believe this is 2008 season. Even after the O'Malley era was over and the McCourts took over, the Dodgers continued the tradition of sending out Christmas cards to their season ticket holders. This one came from the 50th anniversary of the Dodgers in 2008, and it shows the success of the team during that time period. Thank you for joining us today at the West Coast Hall of Fame. I want to thank my good friend Ross Porter and his wonderful wife Lynn Porter, and another good friend of mine, Mark Langill, the Dodger historian, for providing some of the items that we used today. We'll see you next time on the West Coast Hall of Fame.
Let's go! Batter up! We're taking the afternoon off. It's a beautiful day for a ball game today. The fans are out to get a ticket or two. From Walla Walla, Washington to Kalamazoo. It's a beautiful day for a home run. But even a triple's okay. We're gonna cheer